First. I'm Monique DiGiorgio, the Executive Director of Local First Foundation. We'll just give it another minute or two before we get going. And then just out of respect for everyone's time, we'll just dive in, and we may have some folks join us partway, which is just fine. So it looks like we have about 28 participants. We had about 60 register, so we may have some stragglers coming along, but let's get going. It's 5:01 p.m. Again, welcome to this forum to discuss the LPEA election with the board of directors and the candidates that are running. I am Monique DiGiorgio, the executive director of the Local First Foundation, here with Lauren Haggerty, who is with Local First and has been the facilitator to put all this together. So many thanks to her. And then I want to give a shout out to any of our board members that are here. I know that Mary Oswald has logged in and others. So if you're a board member of Local First, just go ahead and kind of do a little wave or a thumbs up so folks can see that you're here. Our board is super engaged in this effort. Emily Bell is here. She's the managing director of Local First, so thanks to her. And then full disclosure, Tim Wheeler, who is running in District 4, is on our board. We intend to treat him just as fairly, or maybe worse than the other candidates. If really, we'll give you a hard time, Tim. But just to disclose that, it's an important disclosure, and we have a very equitable process we'll walk through, and Tim will be held to that. And offline, we'll give him a hard time. So that's kind of the Local First family here. Want to thank all of the candidates for joining us. We have 100% attendance. That's all 8 candidates. Really pleased with that in the 4 districts. Just also a note, Kirsten has a bit of a headache, so she's here to join us, but she may just kind of pause throughout the meeting. So if she doesn't respond to a question, we'll just keep moving on and let her take care of herself. And also wanted to give you the Local First Foundation mission. We are a 501c3 organization in the Local First family. And our mission is to conduct education, research, and outreach on the importance of local self-reliance in order to build an economy that values people, the planet, and prosperity for everyone in the greater La Plata County region. We work very closely with Local First and all of its local independents, business owners and business members, and many of them are here today. We want to thank the candidates that are here, not only for being present tonight and the many forums that are happening throughout the month, which I take as a really great sign that there's more interest in this very important election. And so we really appreciate the time and energy to do this a couple times, and really the commitment that all of these candidates have to step up to the plate and play what is a very, very important role in our community. So hats off to all 8 of the candidates here tonight. And then thank our sponsors. We've had an incredible community support from many businesses that support Local First effort. And so our headline sponsor tonight is Pine Needle Dry Goods. I think Jeremy Dakin might be there out in the Zoom world. Go ahead and give a thumbs up if you're here, Jeremy. I know he registered, but they are the headline sponsor. And then the other supporting businesses include Shaw Solar, Solar Works, Maria's Bookshop, Table to Farm Compost, San Juan Hand Therapy, Living Solar, Zia Taqueria, Sage Farm Fresh Eats, and Yoga Durango. So we're really pleased to have such a strong local independent business community here that supports all of our efforts and supports our local community co-op. They are helping us be able to put this on and help the foundation to have the capacity to do this work. So first, we want to take a moment to explain why Local First is hosting this forum. We have a track record of working on local renewable energy issues with the local independent business community for really our entire 12-year tenure. We might be on 13 years. I've lost track, but we've been around a long time. I count the number of Be Local coupon books to keep me honest. And our engagement with LPEA is really, really important. LPEA is our local rural electric cooperative. because it is a cooperative, it's owned by us, the members, all of us that turn on our lights, plug in our electric vehicles, whatever it is that we do to draw that power from the grid. And being member owned, it means that it's super important for us to engage. So we engage at a variety of levels. The other piece that's super important that maybe some folks don't realize is LPEA is a nonprofit, and the board of directors really provides the policy and decision making for that nonprofit. The mission of LPEA that I'm sure many of the board of directors that are here today know, but just to remind everyone kind of this context, is that the mission of LPEA is to provide its members with safe, reliable electricity at the lowest reasonable cost while being environmentally responsible. And that's a really good context, I think, for all the questions we're going to be asking today in the forum. The board is critical not only in setting policy, but responding to the needs of our community. So there's member engagement that happens every month at the meetings. And we feel that having this forum to hear the voices and the leadership of all 8 candidates here is super important, because that will determine the leadership of the nonprofit. The role that Local First has played has been increasingly important. And in 2019, we partnered with other nonprofits and community members to play a key role in demonstrating the importance of local renewable energy for our future. We had 111 businesses and 1,300 community members sign a petition to ask the city of Durango to set goals. And as a result, the city of Durango has set very, very important goals, and we thank them for their leadership. One is a greenhouse gas emission goal to reduce greenhouse gases 80% from 2016 levels by 2050, and an interim goal of 30% from 2016 levels by 2030. The renewable electricity goals set in 2019, thanks to that support from our businesses and community members, was 100% renewable electricity by 2050, with an interim goal of 50% renewable electricity by 2030. Many of the businesses that are sponsoring this event and are here tonight signed on to that, and the city took a great step in forming those goals, as did LPEA actually just a few months earlier. So I just want to state that goal again for the context so folks have it in their mind. The LPEA goal that was adopted in 2019 was to reduce its carbon footprint by 50% from 2018 levels by the year 2030, while keeping members' costs of electricity lower than 70% of Colorado's cooperative peers. So that's a really important piece to that goal. Both of these goals really demonstrate the extraordinary leadership we've seen in our community, and I think the growing support we've seen for this local self-reliance. Just to underscore that the goals that Local First had while working with the community on these types of initiatives are to keep energy dollars local by offering businesses entrepreneurial investment opportunities while creating competitive, high quality jobs, stabilizing energy costs for citizens and businesses as the cost of fossil fuel energy continues to rise, and protecting our quality of life by keeping Durango's air, land, and water and resources healthy. So tonight we're here with all 8 candidates to learn more about how they intend to bring their leadership and their commitment to our community. And here's how we're going to have the questions asked tonight and how it will work. So there are 4 prepared questions that we sent to the candidates in advance. We have some addendums to those because we've received actually like an outpouring of additional sub-questions, and rather than it be overwhelming, we're trying to group some of these questions. Also, there's been other forums, so we'll ask the question that was given in advance, but also have like a few sub pieces to it to try to build on our dialogue. We received many other questions from community members, business owners, and so we did our best to group those. And then for all of you that are here tonight, Lauren will be getting additional questions through the chat, and we'll just kind of keep monitoring our time and see how many questions we can answer. The good news is just the pages of questions that we did get. The bad news is we can't ask them all. We would love to ask them all, but we want to let you all go for dinner and to enjoy your evening. So we have a couple other opportunities to answer some of those. We've got a radio show on KDUR, Be Local Radio, on May 27th, Thursday, 9 a.m. June 3rd, which is a Thursday, 9 a.m. It's our weekly show. Many of these candidates are going to join us and we'll take the dialogue and continue. So if you asked a question, you don't feel like it was properly introduced this evening, we apologize. We will have other opportunities to do that. In terms of the protocol for tonight, we decided to go with the alphabet. We'll start with in alphabetical order on your last name, and then we'll rotate through. And Lauren is going to have that dinner bell chime when you are out of time. And Lauren, remind me, are you going to do anything when they've got 30 seconds left, or will we just do the chime when they're done?
Yeah, I'll try to raise my hand when you have 30 seconds left, but if not, this is the bell.
And then we'll all be ready for dinner. Great, thank you. We wanted to do that instead of interrupt you. We really respect everything that you have to say, and we'll do our best to give you the time to answer the questions, but that bell will be a reminder to just kind of wrap it up. Don't feel like you have to stop mid-sentence, but if you could wrap it up when you hear that, that would be great. So we are live streaming tonight. Anyone who missed it will have that available. The other webinars and forums, I believe, are also available. And I've actually had folks go and listen to those in advance of tonight. So really know that all of this is super important for our community members. So let's review the candidates that are here tonight and the districts. The directors are elected for 3-year terms. Incumbent directors that are up for re-election this year include, and I'll show you the map in a second, District 1, Archuleta County, Kirsten Skeehan. District 2, South and West La Plata County, Kohler McGinnis. District 3, City of Durango, Britt Bassett, who is not running again. District 4, North and East La Plata County, Tim Wheeler. And so I'm going to share my screen for a second and just show you these districts, because I think it's important to just take a moment here for all of us to wrap our heads around this. Because I always like to remind folks that there's little bits of Hinsdale and Mineral County in the LPEA region, and that's in District 1, the district that Kirsten is currently running for. That's Archuleta County, so just to give you a sense of that. District 4 here, North and East La Plata County, right at the San Juan County border. District 3 is the City of Durango limits. And District 2 is the South and West La Plata County region. So just to give you a sense again of just the scope of LPEA, I know for those of us that live near or close to Durango, we can kind of see things with that lens, but it's really important to remember we've got quite a few counties here engaged. So those are the districts. And tonight, we're going to not start with an introduction statement. I know other forums have done that. What Lauren is going to do is share the candidate summaries with you. We want to get right into the details of questions that are being asked, and I believe she's going to put those in the chat. So for any of you that are wondering about the background of all 8 candidates, we don't want to take the 2 or 3 minutes for them to share that. Please just kind of scroll through and get up to speed on the background. And I think as they answer the questions, it'll be clear what they're bringing to the table. So we're going to skip that question tonight. And starting in alphabetical order, we're going to start with Ted Compton. So the first question, we're going to have 90 seconds for each candidate. And the first question is about cost of energy. Durango and La Plata County have a high cost of living. How do you plan to keep electric rates reasonable for families and businesses struggling to pay the bills? Now that's the question that has been provided in advance to the candidates. We got quite a few additional comments about this, and if the candidates feel ready to answer, it'd be great if you could specifically also speak to the cost of renewables versus fossil fuels. That was a question that came up, and how that does relate to the commitment to affordable energy. Would be great to kind of integrate into that question. We had 2 or 3 people that asked about that. So we'll start with Ted Compton, and you have 90 seconds, Ted.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for having me tonight. Thanks for everyone who's attending, both on the live stream and on the Zoom. So I'm super happy to be here. I think it's great that this is the first question. I think it really is one of the most important things. You know, I would maybe only put reliability higher than affordability. And it doesn't matter what you pay for your electricity if the lights don't come on. So certainly we have to always stay supremely focused on a reliable energy supply. As far as affordability, I think we all get it. There's a high cost of living in Durango. We all pay a premium to live in such a wonderful place where a lot of people want to live. So yeah, it really is kind of one of the most important things, and everything else that we talk about, I think, or at least the other questions that I have visibility on, I'm not knowing what everyone else might ask, are going to be contained within that lens. If I answer a question that says we need to do this, it always comes with a focus on affordable energy. That's a commitment that LPEA has made, and that's a commitment that every board member who gets on, who does get on the board, should make at the same time. So, but at the same time, I have to suggest that our way of keeping energy affordable is not necessarily status quo. Just because it's affordable now doesn't mean it necessarily will be if we stay with status quo. So I do think we have to clearly look at options for renewables. And Monique, to your second question, renewables are really diving under the cost of fossil fuel energy. So one of the ways that we get to lower rates is to look hard at how do we incorporate more renewables into our system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. The next individual to answer the question is Kohler McGinnis.
Thank you. So I looked at that question, and my first thought was, how do we keep rates where they are or try to make them lower? And there's a couple pros that I think we have going, a couple advantages at this moment. LPEA is this year financially very strong. And a couple other positive things is that we do have a possible tri-state reduction in the power that they're going to sell to us. And also we created a rate stabilization fund. And that fund can be used to help stabilize the rates. Now, with that being said, I think there's also some worries that I have. And those worries, the biggest one is inflation. And to give an example, we took action last month with the board on a contract, and we had to redo the pricing on the contract, which basically doubled it. And it was huge. We're talking big dollars. So inflation is something that really bothers me. Another thing is last year, due to the pandemic, we deferred a lot of our CapEx projects. And that's what helped us get financially strong. But a lot of those are very necessary, so they're going to pop back up. So those are some of the worries. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Well, then this afternoon, I attended the Finance and Audit Committee. I'm not a member there, but I did attend it. And I'll tell you, as members of LPEA, you're in good hands. It was really encouraging what happened in that committee meeting. Every single person, every member, I should say, and that's made up of board members as well as staff, all of them were pushing to what can we do to reduce rates. And they're looking at it very deeply and very thoroughly. And that's important because that is the key right here, trying to keep that down. The other part of that question was talking about renewables compared to fossil fuels and some other generations. And yes, it is coming in cheaper. Some of the rates that we're getting proposed are less. We have to be careful with that though, because that is the energy that is going down and not the infrastructure that goes around it. So when you look at labor or materials or transformers or substations, all those prices are going up. So it will be a challenge, but at least it's encouraging because it's less expensive generation than what we know of right now. So it's a good way to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Veronica?
There you go. Hi there. So, well, I can't tell you about La Plata or Durango. I'm here in Archuleta County. And what I can tell you is that we should first start with what's in the control of LPEA. And that would be fiscal discipline. And then also the other opportunities to educate not only the members, but maybe even perhaps some of the board members on some of the items that we could do, such as peak load and how that affects the members' bills, access to energy audits, such as simple things as doing energy audits on their homes, doing the LED lights, things like that, that really would and can impact our members. As far as the second piece of that question, I know that the Tri-State has, and I know this is kind of going into another one of the questions of the four, but Tri-State also has extended their portfolio with renewable energy. So I think thinking forward is exactly what LPEA and Tri-State are doing together. And I feel like that that's a good combination, a good match. And I feel strongly that this is going to work going forward, and we're going to have even a better year.
Thank you for Veronica, and thanks for mentioning, obviously, we're talking about Archuleta County, District 1. While Local First has business members in La Plata County, the foundation does work in the region. So we should update our language to be more inclusive as it relates to the Local First Foundation. So we're happy to have you here. The next candidate to answer that question, John Purser.
Sorry, it took me a minute to find the unmute. I think Ted pointed out something very important, which is reliability is critical, but it's not reliability at any cost. What we saw in Texas with electric suppliers that were market-based is people got some shocking bills. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday. His typical bill was around $80. During the recent disruption of power supply in Texas, he retained his power, but his bill went to $840. So I think it's important to maintain a relationship with a power producer. One of the things about Tri-State that gives us reliability is the geographic dispersity of it. They have generating stations in a lot of different places. As they're adding solar and renewables, they're adding them in a variety of places. So it gives us more reliability in our network. I think that renewables are absolutely necessary, but we also have to pay attention to peak load and what is the cost at peak load and how renewables may or may not impact that. So thank you.
Thank you, John. The next candidate to answer is Kirsten Skeehan, if she is still here.
I am. Thank you so much. And I'd be happy to answer in writing any of those thousands of questions you said you had, Monique.
Okay.
If you want to get them back out, that might be a way to get some of that information out. So costs are huge. Over here in Archuleta County, I don't know if you guys know, our median income is much lower than in La Plata County. And that's the facts, and I keep that in mind at all times. The working families, the farmers are super important, and we have to have affordable and reliable electricity for that. You know, when I think about Texas, the lesson I learned from Texas is there's a big difference between affordable and cheap. And Texas went cheap. They decided not to winterize a lot of their stuff, the same stuff that froze 10 years ago. And oh my God, isn't this a surprise? It happened again. And we have this far out rates because of that. They did not do that. They decided to go cheap. And I think affordability does not necessarily have to mean that we reduce reliability. I think they're super important. I really appreciate it what Veronica was saying about conservation. I think that's something that we can't lose sight of. And anything that we can do to help make the audits available, the energy audits available, any of the conservation attempts available are very important for us. There you go. Thank you. That's my timer.
Yeah, good job. All right. Yeah, appreciate you guys being succinct. You're doing an awesome job. Mark Walzer, will you please answer that question?
Absolutely. It is a key mission. It's arguably the most important, although reliable energy access is essential. Keeping it affordable is equally important. And I think you've heard a variety of the candidates talk about some important components of that. I do think there's room for expansion of local energy production, and I think I would differ a little bit with Mr. Purser's perspective in terms of, I think that increasing at least some local production gives us an opportunity for more resilience within our grid. If for some reason the long range transmission lines that connect us to tri-state were to have issues, if we have local generation, which is as a result of our prime location for solar rapidly decreasing in cost, I think there's a lot of potential for that. That being said, I don't think we should just go local for the sake of going local. I think we need to look at the numbers, do the math, and make sure that we're making economically prudent decisions in that regard. I think Veronica's point surrounding the variety of ways that we can work with all of our members to make sure they know what they can do to decrease not only the amount of electricity they need, but also to make sure that their homes and their businesses are using up-to-date technologies with respect to energy efficiency is going to be essential going forward. And so I really seek to educate myself and members on the wide variety of rebates and options that are available for looking into energy efficiency and also modernizing the technologies within our individual homes. I think the same needs to continue to be done in terms of robust investments in maintaining our grid, because oftentimes maintenance is it might cost a little bit more upfront, but in the long term it will save us and all of our members money. And so I think making sure that all of LPEA's members are going to trainings and are up to speed with what they can be doing to keep our grid in the best shape possible as it becomes increasingly complex is going to be really important as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Bill Waters, the next candidate to answer this question.
Yes, thank you. One of the things I think we need to remember, electricity is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And reliability is top, as well as affordability. Renewables are a great asset that we can have in our community, but we also have to look at the reliability of it. I was in the San Luis Valley and they put a huge solar array, Edison Electric did years ago. And they learned something, because there's so many variables in the solar industry, that the wind blew so much over there, it covered the solar panels. So they had to make wipers to make the solar panels efficient. To keep it affordable, we have to continue to work with the suppliers that we have and be good negotiators. And the board needs to do that as a collaborated group. The 8% decrease in the rates that Tri-State has pushed to LPEA, or they're pushing towards us, we should bargain on those. The other thing is conservation is an absolute. You need to teach your kids to turn the lights off, insulate your houses better, do your windows that everybody talked about, lower appliances that use less power. And we have to know the bank load and when that's the time to be doing that. The other thing, farmers and ranchers rely on electricity. So if they could produce electricity that goes to the farmers at a reduced rate, that could help lower the cost of the electric stuff to them. And we also got to protect our elderly and low-income families with good electric low rates. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. And then Tim Wheeler, the last candidate to answer this question.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, with my name, I'm used to always being last, hopefully not least. So I think the key thing for in this question about keeping electric rates reasonable for families and businesses is really, what are we paying for our power supply? That is, about 70% of the cost of cost basis for La Plata Electric, right? So we can do things like be more efficient, which this staff does a great job at accomplishing, but you're tinkering with 30% of the cost structure. So the first thing we have to do is look at the power supply costs. And right now, the contract we have with our current power supplier is with one of the most expensive power suppliers in the country, and certainly the most expensive in Colorado. So if what we want to do is provide more affordable rates, which is actually part of our mission statement, in addition to safety and reliability, we are also supposed to, as directors, try and achieve the lowest reasonable cost. And the first thing we have to do is look at our power supplier, Tri-State, and say, they are not the lowest reasonable cost. And so what we have to do is find a better way and a lower cost. And Tri-State is going to be that lowest cost because they made all their investment in coal plants and they have debt that they have to pay off. And they can try to achieve much lower costs through renewables, but we could do that a lot faster if we were not under the contract that we have with Tri-State today, which demands that we buy 95% of our power from them. So the real key thing is to really find a way to access much lower cost renewables outside that contract. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. So that completes the answers to round one, and it was a good segue to our second question. And I'll give Kohler a little heads up. You're going to be the next one to answer the question first, so you can prepare. The second question is about the relationship between LPEA and Tri-State generation and transmission, and the current energy portfolio from Tri-State generation and transmission, and how you see that relationship moving into the future. This was the written question that was given to all the candidates. In addition, we've received a few other kind of sub questions to that. So if you are able, when you answer, to address a little bit more about kind of the numbers of what we've been learning about this contract with Tri-State and what the buyout or partial buyout would cost. So in previous forums, some of the candidates here have mentioned seeing numbers in order to make a decision about whether or not to pursue a buyout from Tri-State. Some of those numbers are available, at least kind of at a high level. And so what we'd like to know is if if as a candidate you put that in your answer, what kind of information do you feel is missing in order to make the decision on this very important relationship between LPEA and Tri-State and the potential of a buyout? So Kohler, you are the first to answer, and you have a full 2 minutes. This is the most we're going to give to any question because it's the hot topic that everybody has. So feel free to talk about other subparts as well. Go ahead, Kohler.
Okay, and on the first one, I didn't hear the thing go off to let us know about the time. So if I do go over time, just wait, please.
Okay.
So on our current relationship with Tri-State, I would classify it as being very rocky. LPEA, we have legal action against Tri-State. Up against in Washington with FERC. And there's also a big discouragement for not being able to get the numbers that you were just speaking about. Yes, there's some high level numbers, but they aren't the numbers. We do not know the number. And until we get numbers on either the full buyout or a partial buyout, we can't actually take action on what we want to do. So it is very, very discouraging. As far as going forward with this relationship, I don't think it will become any better until we get those numbers and we figure out the direction we're going. And as what we've done is we've come up with a three-pronged strategy. One is to stay the course the way we are now. Second one is partial requirements. And the third one is a complete buyout. All three of them are going to require a business relationship with Tri-State, due to that's transmission all the way around us if we do the complete buyout. And so I think it should be just exactly that. It should be a business relationship. And that should be just like it is now. On your contracts, you work with terms, you do negotiation, you make sure you do what you want to do and get it in there to make it work for you. And that's what we need to do for LPEA. Once we get these numbers, then we can move forward with what we want to do. If we want to do more locally, if that's feasible, the partial buyout might be the way to go. The full buyout might be the way to go. But you can't really answer it until you get those numbers. And as far as the timetable on that, we don't know. FERC is a federal agency. It's fairly bureaucratic. our CEO has worked for them in the past, so she lets us know kind of how they move, and it doesn't move fast. It's also very, very expensive. So it's a tough battle, and it creates a lot of hardship with relationships between LPA and Tri-State. And I can't remember the other part of your question, so I'll stop right there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kohler. Veronica, would you please answer the second question?
Yes, thank you. Our power from Tri-State, it has been reliable and affordable. And if it's not broke, why are we trying to fix it? Tri-State's rates are going to be going down. They are subject to approval by FERC. Tri-State has made the move away from coal. Tri-State has also have a high percentage of renewable energy in their portfolio. So they are trying to make that move for the renewables. And if we go away from Tri-State, I mean, right now already, from my understanding, the board has already spent over $2 million in evaluating to break the contract with Tri-State. Over $2 million. That is a huge amount of money that is being spent on evaluating. We could have used that money somewhere else in our communities to better the infrastructure of what LPA wants to do. So if it's not broke, let's not fix it. Let's look at concentrating our efforts and that type of money to the infrastructure if we want to do local energy.
Thank you so much, Veronica. And John Purser is the next to answer.
Thank you. I agree with Kohler. It's incredibly frustrating that we can't get the numbers from Tri-State. And I don't believe I have access to the contract. I've been told that they have a contractual obligation to provide us numbers, but I haven't seen the contract, so I don't know that. If they have a contractual obligation, then we should have the numbers. If they don't, then it is going to be incredibly painful. We have to understand, we signed that contract, we committed to it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it won't be painful leaving. The biggest thing for me, when we talk about risks of pricing for low-income people, one of the big risks would be a full buyout. I don't see how we could do that without adding $20 to $30 a month to the average bill in order to pay off the debt. And I don't hear that talked about a great deal. What I would like to see with Tri-State is the metrics for their carbon footprint. I'd like to see that with LPEA, and I'd like to see that with Tri-State. I want to see on my monthly bill what my carbon footprint is. One of the biggest factors with leaving Tri-State was the greenhouse gas emissions. And both Tri-State and LPEA have set goals, but I don't see the metrics to measure those goals. And if I were on the board, I'd be a broken record about metrics in holding Tri-State and holding LPEA accountable to those metrics. We need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We need to measure them. We need to know what they are. And I personally want to see it printed on my monthly bill, and I want to see it in the annual reports. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. And Kirsten is the next one to answer this question.
Yes, thank you. Our relationship with Tri-State, I'm with Kohler. It's a rocky one. I like to think of it as a kind of a push and pull relationship. The push part is the legal aspects that we've been taking with them. And I think if we hadn't been pushing Tri-State, we would not have gotten a guarantee of the 2%. What they've done is that's now in the contracts, 2% this year, 2% next year, 8% total. So that would not have happened without the pushing. The pulling part comes from within the board. I was on the Tri-State board for 2 years and learned a lot during that time on both how to run a G&T and how not to run a G&T. Their coal is an issue for them, and how to deal with their stranded assets. They're headed towards renewables, and I think by 2050 they're gonna have to be there, and by 2030 they're going to be much the way on their way there. But without, I'm sorry, forgot my chain there. That's the headache kicking in. I'm going to change subjects a little bit here. Tri-State did do a long-term financial forecast, and in that forecast, you can see a steep incline in their expected rates in 2040, and that's the time that all of their debt is going to become due on those coal plants, and they're going to be having to figure that out. I think there's going to be a lot of programs to help figure that out, but I think us mitigating our risk by buying down some of that contract, and we know the pieces of the equation we do know is that renewable energy at utility scale is less expensive than coal, period. Getting it in the right place at the right time comes through transmission. We can do this. So we know that it is less expensive. We know that it can be significantly less expensive. If we have some coming from Tri-State, some coming from 3 or 4 other places, then we've diversified it. If we can make it local, I'm a big fan of microgrids. I can actually, if we can get a spiel going on microgrids, I think there's a great thing for that, because that's really localizing it. And then you don't have to worry about if your neighbor's down. If you're on a microgrid, the energy that you produce in your area is going to be able to be used by you and your little neighborhood. I forgot to start my timer. I don't know where I am, so I'm going to shut up now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, and for joining us when you have a massive headache. That's heroic. Thank you so much. Mark, you are the next individual to answer the question.
Great, thank you. Well, I want to start by thanking Kirsten for the work she did during the 2 years that she did sit on the Tri-State board, because I think it's been instrumental in starting to push them in the right direction and helping us lower our rates here for the next couple of years with them. And I want to agree with both John and Kohler in terms of how frustrating it is that we have been unable to get those numbers from Tri-State. And I'd say, frankly, it's shameful on their behalf that they are essentially playing a game with us and so unwilling to collaborate with us in that regard. But I do hope our board can collaborate and continue to work with them to move forward in a more productive way. I do want to disagree a little bit with Veronica. I do feel Tri-State's production is broken. Now, I appreciate their commitment to trying to head towards more renewables in the future. But frankly, I question whether they would have done that if it were not for pressure from the state legislature here in recent years. So I think it's in our interest and in all of the co-ops that are part of Tri-State's interest, and frankly in all Colorado citizens' interests, to continue to push Tri-State in the right direction, because they are burning large amounts of coal currently and will be continuing to do so at least in the immediate future. I hope they can meet their goals towards more renewables, but I really think that we need to see this where it is, which is that all hands need to be on deck in terms of continuing to push Tri-State in the right direction.
Thank you so much, Mark. And then Bill Waters is next.
Thank you. I agree with the others that the relationship we have with Tri-State has become trying. One thing it will take is good negotiations with them, and someone with a firm hand to get them to bring the numbers to the table. In the business I've been in forever, I do a lot of negotiation stuff and this high dollar stuff. And some people are very tight-lipped with what they have because they don't want to lose what they have. I have seen Tri-State moving in a positive direction of their portfolio, moving to renewables and other things. I have customers that are now putting a line in from Lyman in the wind energy sector clear to the Meeker area because of renewable energy. If we could raise our ability above the 5 percentile to a 10 percentile, locally produced, or places we get our energy other than Tri-State, I think that would help a lot. With the numerous rural members of Tri-State, it's helped the power that LPEA has to negotiate and get something moving. I've researched it and seen 147 million, I've seen 47 million. It's like Kohler said, we have no idea. But we have to continue the deal and have a strong arm to get them to commit. And I think it's more complicated than we all know. So we do have to be cautious in that. I would like to see Tri-State do more hydro. And I know everybody's going to ask why I say this. In Tri-State and in Nebraska, they use some nuclear plants, which is very efficient, that helps them get away from the coal and the natural gas stuff of the fossil and lower their carbon footprint. So there are other things and avenues we have out there to make things happen. We just got to be cautious with it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Bill. Tim Wheeler, you are next.
Yeah, this question is about Tri-State's our relationship with Tri-State and the current energy portfolio. And essentially whatever Tri-State's energy portfolio is ours for the most part, based on the current contract. So our relationship is that contract. That contract is available on the website at LPEA. Anyone can go and read it if they'd like to. And it's a contract that provides us with very dirty and expensive power. And there are alternatives out there that we should be able to access. And that information is also on our, the analysis that the Power Supply Committee provided is also on the LPEA website for anyone who wants to look for it, right? My real concern here is that Tri-State is run not by LPEA members, and I'm elected to the LPEA board at present, and I hope to be elected again. and I have a deep responsibility to us as members and owners of Tri-State, or excuse me, of LPEA, right? Tri-State is run by 42 co-ops. Ours is one voice, and 22 of those co-ops are less than a quarter of our size, and they basically have no interest. Their interest is not the same as ours and our members, and they dictate what happens with Tri-State. Tri-State has not given us an exit number. We have had to go utilize legal means to try and negotiate, as Bill has suggested. I came into this campaign 3 years ago thinking, like Bill has said he is thinking now, we can negotiate. And 3 years later, after my experience with Tri-State's legal machinations, I'm convinced you cannot negotiate them. It's their way or the highway. And their small number of, large number of small co-ops dictates what is Tri-State's interest. It's not ours. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Tim. And then the last candidate to answer this question is Ted Compton.
Thank you very much. So a lot's been said already, and I won't rehash too much of it. I agree the relationship's rocky. I agree that we have to apply pressure. I agree with Tim on that point that we wouldn't be in the spot we're in without applying pressure. I think we're lucky that we're not the only ones applying pressure. So more than one party indicating their displeasure with a business arrangement helps. But I'm going to flip a little bit and say, why am I optimistic? How can it get better? And it kind of goes back to a little bit of Kohler's description of this is a business relationship. The parties are making choices on business matters in their best interest, and I see a light at the end of the tunnel. I see a good possibility that Tri-State has now been put in a position where, number one, they're realizing that they have to respect the requests of some of the members, some of the co-op members. They're also in a position, and I think Kirsten mentioned it, they're not in a great financial position. They've got a lot of debt coming due, not immediately. The short term actually looks pretty good for them, and that's why they're able to, at this time, do some rate lowering for their members. And so that looks really good in the short term, but in the long term, that's not going to be good. They know that. They're not sharing that, but they know that. And so my optimism suggests that we are on the cusp of being offered a decision to make. Some sort of buyout offer. If I'm guessing it's a partial buyout, I think there's been a lot of chitter chatter about what that looks like. That to me means it's likely to be coming. I also think that the number won't be horrible, because I think they need to make this go away, and they need the cash that will be supplied. So the reason why I'm running right now is because I want to be in that boardroom when this decision is presented to us. And I think it's coming very soon. So thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Ted. So we completed the second question. The next question has to do with climate impacts. So what do you see as the best way for LPA to address climate impacts in the next decade? There are 2 minutes to answer this question. In previous forums, all the candidates have expressed concern over climate change and pursuing renewable energy to a certain degree to reduce our carbon footprint. We would love for you to, candidates, talk a little bit more in detail about this question, specifically to what extent you think that it is or is not appropriate for LPA to secure significant greater local renewable energy generation. And then if you can also speak to what you do believe are the local economic benefits, if any, from this type of effort. So we will start with Veronica, who's the first person to answer this question.
Okay, so I guess I've said this before. We have to look at what the LPA has control of. Again, the energy efficiencies, the home energy audits, the LED energies, the education piece with the members. Again, kind of pulling in from the previous question that Tri-State is considering increasing the caps for the non-contracted energy. So I see that will be increasing, so that way we are going to be able to have more than just 5% from that non-contracted energy, which I feel will help us. Sorry, I'm concerned if we move away from Tri-State. It sounds like, you know, what others have said, that the cost will be lower in their perspective. But if we look to see what others in Colorado have done, like Kit Carson, they broke their contract, they went with Guzman, their power rates have increased from, I believe I read $20 a month. That would be devastating to some of our residents here in Archuleta County. Like Kristen said, we have a very low income earning members here, and that would be devastating. So I would be very concerned if we broke that contract with Tri-State and spend all of that money to get out of something that, yes, the rates are good right now, but we LPEA, hence why I'm running for the board, I feel like there's a lot more that we can do in order to get our infrastructure to where it needs to be able to, when the time comes, be able to have renewable energy to be offered to Archuleta County specifically, but to La Plata as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Veronica. And John Purser is the next candidate to answer.
Thank you. The last several years, I've been a volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby and have made repeated trips back to Washington and lobbied in congressional and Senate offices, meeting with energy staffers. And I advocate for a price on carbon. And I think LPEA as a board should do the same. There are 29 Nobel laureate economists who, across the political spectrum, who advocate for carbon fee and dividend as the most effective and efficient way to address this. So I would start right there. And then the number two thing I already mentioned, we have to have metrics. We have to know what our carbon footprint is now and see it every year. And again, make it visible, put it on our bill monthly so that we know. People can be highly incentivized on their own. If they know what their carbon footprint is, they can make decisions about how to best lower it that suits their particular lifestyle. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. And then Kirsten is next.
Yes, thank you. Do we have a minute and a half on this one? I didn't catch the time.
You have a full 2 minutes if you want.
2 minutes on this one. Okay, thank you. I'm not going to reset my timer. We're good. So this is the best way we can impact climate impact. We can impact climate change from LPA standpoint. So locally, I do a lot with the Pareto rule of 80-20. 80% of your problems come from 20% of your people, or 80% of your burden. Well, for Tri-State, it's kind of a 70-30, right? 70% of our power, of our cost, and I know more than 70% of our carbon footprint comes from our power contract. So if we can affect that, if we can make that cleaner, so how do we make that cleaner? We diversify, we do some local, we do some utility scale that may not be able to happen local. Don't have great wind here in Archuleta and in La Plata, but we do have great wind over in the plains. Could use some of that. Being able to diversify that and kind of offset each other. I'm a big fan of hydrogen. I think in 15 years, hydrogen is going to be the solution, but what do we do in the meantime? Because you were asking about what happens in the next 10 years. Oh, I think maybe on a large scale, being an advocate for a price on carbon, not a bad idea, but what can we do to affect change? And I think hitting at that portfolio is super important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. And Mark Walzer?
Yeah, we do have to look what's within our control. Right now, we do influence Tri-State, and Tri-State influences us. I hope Ted's optimism is well placed, and if it is, we will see what comes of that. If we're being perfectly honest, as long as we are receiving most of our power from Tri-State, then we, if we're really looking at lowering carbon emissions, have to help our members figure out ways to use less electricity and to be more energy efficient. And that's the reality of the situation, so long as we're tied to Tri-State, if Tri-State continues to have such an extensive coal portfolio. I, for that reason, would say it's imperative for us to continue to push Tri-State away from that. And I know they've made energy commitments for going towards renewables. We need to hold them to those commitments. And that's going to require, vocal activism on both the board and members and all of the co-ops that are part of Tri-State. I do think that John listed some great ideas for both a national possibility and some opportunities for providing dividends as an incentive. But again, that's kind of out of the immediate scope of LPEA. I think it's very important, and I appreciate him bringing that information to people, because I too support that particular approach. But if we're being honest, if we're part of Tri-State and they are producing most of their energy from coal, then if we're looking to reduce emissions, we have to help all of our members lower their electricity consumption.
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. And then Bill Waters next.
I think some of the major things that LPEA can do to address the climate and lower the carbon footprint is more solar, more hydroelectric, and wind. One thing that has happened in the past, and we have more technologies that we do things are getting cleaner. Cars run cleaner. Diesels run way cleaner. There's a lot of things that are changing that are cleaner because of our technology. Efficiency, as they said, the less power you use, the more it takes of whatever energy source you have to provide it to you. Use less of that. The battery efficiency in the solar industry is gaining great movement to being better. I think that one of the things, like Mercer says, is we do have to be more transparent to our members of how we're lowering our carbon footprint. I know that we can't just go 100% renewable tomorrow. We can't turn the switch off because there's not a good enough reliable source to take that place. So if we have to get away from coal, which is dirty, if we have to use natural gas or something for a little while to get us to that renewable energy that we need to lower that carbon footprint, we have to be open to that and go slow at it. We need to keep it moving forward. We can't do this forever with dirty coal, but we do have to use some of the cleaner stuff that's there to get us to the next level. That way the cost of the buyout or the other stuff we do is lowered to the members. So as we try to address the climate change, it's very important that we also keep affordable power to those on fixed income and the elderly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. Tim Wheeler?
Oh, sorry, I had to unmute. Some people say on a Zoom call with me, mute is the best part. So I'm just, so I think, you know, in terms of this question, what's the best way for LPA to address climate impacts? The simple fact is we have to find a way to use power that doesn't burn fossil fuels. I mean, that's the simplest. And at the moment, we cannot take any other avenue unless Tri-State, which is effectively our regulator at this point through that contract, allows it. So we've already achieved our 5% local generation in that contract. So there is no other way for us to do it unless we find a way to get relief of that contract, as Kohler mentioned, through one of the prongs of the three-pronged strategy, right? So that is what we need to continue to pursue in order to do three things. One is to get much cleaner power to lower those emissions. Second is to find the benefit of much less expensive renewables that can generate, that they are way under the cost of electric power that is coming from fossil fuel plants, including gas at this point. And the other is we need to invest more in local power generation, not that we would generate it at local, or excuse me, at LPA, but that we will have contracts with producers locally. That will keep more money in our local economy, which will cause, better recirculation of those dollars. At the moment, we send that $70 million a year to Denver. And I think we should not send dollars to Denver. We should keep them here in our local economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ted Compton?
All right, thanks. A lot of really good suggestions about how LPEA can address climate impacts. So I don't have any real new suggestions on top of that. I'm going to take a little bit of different tack on it. And I'm just going to say that one thing we can't do and have an impact on climate change is none. Nothing is not a great option to answer this question. But even if we do everything, even if we do all the great ideas that have been suggested, let me also suggest that we still do almost nothing. LPA's territory is very small nationally and globally. So, we're just doing the little things that we can do. What can we actually do? We can be an example. We can lead by example. We can do some things that everybody in Colorado will look at and say, wow, I didn't know that was possible. That's really cool. Now let's all do it. Now all of Colorado is doing that. Now Colorado is leading by example. So, this is one of the things I'm passionate about. I'm a local boy. I'm a Durango guy. I grew up here. I went away to college. I came back. I'm very proud of our community. We do some amazing things. I mean, we can just look at, the organization that's hosting Locals First, the businesses that sponsor Locals First. These are things that we can be massively proud of. I'm a firm believer that at some point in the future, Durango, LPEA will be able to be massively proud of what we're doing with energy to protect our climate. And I think we can get there, and we can't do it if we keep our head in the sand.
Thank you so much, Ted. And the last individual to answer this third question is Kohler.
Thank you. Ted, you kind of stole some of my thunder, but I'll take off. It's going to be a little bit different than the others did. And the question was, what can LPA do? And my quickest answer is stay the course. What LPA has done is we've come with a strategic goal about reducing our carbon by keeping our price very, very competitive. That's very, very key. And then when we look at other things that LPA is doing, they did set an example. And they started with their own footprint. And they went through their facilities and they changed out all their lights to LEDs. They put different sensors throughout the facilities to control heat, air conditioning, things like that. That's a perfect example. And like Mark mentioned, one of the other things that LPA does and should continue to do is educate our members. It would really help them out to show how they should consume their power and what's the best way. In addition to that, I think a couple other projects and programs that LPEA does that really pushes us towards helping our climate. One of them is distributed resources, distributed generation. And, you know, right now, LPEA will give you a free EV charger if you have an EV. And the key to that, or the trick to that, or the hook, I should say, is that LPEA will control it. And they will control when your car gets charged up, and they will control sometimes pulling power out of there if they need it. Now, it sounds kind of like a personal infringement, but it really isn't, because you tell, you know, you state, okay, I want my car at 6 in the morning to be fully charged, and you don't care what time of the night or when it's going to get charged up. But this really helps out as far as evening out that load that we're doing. And if we can shift some of this load to daytime when you have more renewables that are more active, this is pretty key to helping us as far as a long-term climate change. Another push is for LPEA to go, there we go. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Kohler. So in the last 20 minutes here, we're going to pick up the pace, have 60-second answers focused on many of the questions that came in, either written or prior to this, and those that are in the chat. So the next question that you have 60 seconds to answer is if you could talk about what separates you from the other candidate running in your district. There's a lot of common ground across all the candidates, which I think is a great sign. This particular individual wanted folks to just talk a little bit about how you see yourself being different from the other candidate in your district. And we are going to start with John Prisher. You with us, John, if you're on mute?
Yeah, sorry, it took me a minute on the mute button. Two things. My academic training is in economics as well as computer science. I have a strong background in environmental economics, plus financial institutions and markets. So I have a very analytical mind. I'm a policy nerd. When it comes to bills before Congress or even here, I'm going to read the details to a very minute level and look at it in a very broad perspective. I also believe in transparency, and what I've seen of the board, the transparency is not there. The John Witchell's appointment to the board was a process absolutely pathetic in terms of transparency. The other thing I'm going to insist on is measurable metrics for our greenhouse gas emissions. The goal was set 2 years ago, and we still, or 3 years ago, we still have no metrics for performance. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, John. Kirsten, you are next for this question.
Yes, thank you. Before I was on the LPEA board, I had already had a lot of experience, both as in the Navy and then also in the corporate world. I built computer centers and I buried fiber cable between campuses. So I understood big projects. And so I brought that to it. I was able to leverage that background on the LPEA board for these last 3 years. And I think that's what sets me apart the most from my opponent. The work that I've done on the tri-state board as a polling mechanism, the work that I've done on the Finance and Audit Committee. I'm currently the chair of the Broadband Committee, and we have a feasibility study out to see what role does LPEA play, if any, in getting affordable broadband to folks. So I bring experience, and not only lifetime experience, but also most recently 3 years of LPEA experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. Mark?
Well, I would venture to say that at least one key difference is I am a teacher by profession. And so for me, one of my big goals of this campaign is really to both educate myself and educate members and educate candidates on how we can collaborate and work together to find the best solutions for our cooperative. For 3 years, I sat on the Durango 9R negotiations team, so I do have negotiations experience. I negotiated on behalf of several hundred teachers with respect to our master agreement, and so I think the critical thinking and collaborative skills that I've acquired through that and through my graduate degree in teacher leadership are probably areas that would differ a little bit from Kohler's background.
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. Bill Waters?
Yes, I bring 43 years of experience in the construction industry with finance, reading profit and loss statements, negotiations, multi-million-dollar contracts we have to go with. And we didn't have the cheapest product. We were the most expensive. So when you bring return on investment, it's very important for La Plata Electric to do that as well. So what that brings is wisdom and experience from all of the stuff we do. And in the construction industry, that is what La Plata Electric does a lot of. And I would push for the safety of the people, because it's a dangerous occupation they in when this stuff is bad in the weather. And so the wisdom and the years experience, and I hope to get retired so I could dedicate all my time to the board. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. Tim Wheeler?
Thank you. Yeah, I think I have a lot of business and leadership experience. I've worked in a high-tech industry for 18 years, most recently, before I moved here 27 years ago, Apple Computer as the marketing director. I've been a Main Avenue business owner and for 12 years. I've had extreme experience on board governance, and board governance is, which is what is being called for in this job. It's not about getting down into the details. The staff take care of that. This is about policy. And, it's allowed me to be very effective. I've been I was part of a member of the Power Supply Committee. I've been LPEA's treasurer, elected by the board for 3 years running. I've led the creation of and been the chairperson for the Finance and Audit Committee, which amongst other things has established yearly financial goals for the co-op. We initiated a new budgeting process leading to greater financial transparency and results. I've served as LPEA's representative in FAFSA, and I've also been on the broadband committee. So I've been very effective in my job.
Thank you so much, Tim. Ted Compton?
Thanks. So like I said, I think we're poised for this incoming board to make some very important decisions in the near future. And I'm really running on competence. I have 2 engineering degrees. I have 27 years in the energy industry. Quite a bit of board level experience. One of my board positions is 7 years now on the Fast Track Communications Board, which is the broadband owned by LPEA. And so what I'm really suggesting is that I'm the person that you want in that boardroom when these hard decisions get made coming up.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ted. Kohler?
Thank you. So the question was, how do we compare to our opponent? And to be very honest with you, I don't know that I can compare myself to him because I have not met him. And it's kind of interesting because we live within a half mile of each other, but we have not bumped into each other. So I'll just talk about myself. And I do believe what the strength that I have is experience. I've had 6 years on the LPEA board now. And in those 6 years, I've served on the Tri-State board. And like Kirsten says, that's quite an education in itself. You kind of find out the inner workings of Tri-State. I've also been on the Colorado Rural Electric Association board and the Western United board. Now, Western United is something most people aren't familiar with, but they supply the materials for LPEA and many of the co-ops in, I think it's 7 states now. And so the experience is through legislation like CREA, through the workings of our power from Tri-State, and from management of materials and everything else from Western United. There we go at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kohler. And then Veronica is the last candidate to answer this question. Veronica, are you with us? You might be on mute. I'm looking here to see. Oh,
Oh, there we
you are.
go. Sorry about that. Okay. So a little bit about me. I have a master's in business. I've worked for huge corporations as a human resources manager, managing as many as 5,000 people. So policies, procedures, that transparency that is needed in those types of situations, I have that experience. I have lots of board experience locally here in Archuleta County and from where I moved from before, as well as I was a court facilitator for the courts in a big city. I'm a local realtor, so I am very well aware of what's happening in my community, in my county, and I have those local ties of understanding what our members, not only the individuals, but businesses, and how this would affect them.
Okay, thank you so much, Veronica. So we only have 15 minutes left. I noticed in the chat there's a great discussion on broadband. We had a couple of broadband questions submitted to us. There was another forum on Tuesday where there was a pretty extensive broadband discussion. So I think what I'm going to do is encourage folks to go to that link and listen to that if you can. I don't know if we're going to get a broadband question in. Let's see. The next question we're going to ask is about reliability. It's an important discussion. People have mentioned it. We haven't really gotten into the nuts and bolts of it. So we'll take 60 seconds for each candidate to talk about reliability. The question is, there have been reliability discussions in the past forums. What do you believe Tri-State's role is as it relates to providing reliability and as it relates to balancing authorities like WAPA, the Western Area Power Administration, and the Western Area Colorado, Missouri, that balances our region? Take 60 seconds a little bit to talk more about your understanding of balancing authorities and reliability. The first person to answer this will be Kirsten.
Thank you. So WAPA is our reliability coordinator. And if the energy is there, it's their job to get it to the places that it's supposed to be. So they are agnostic to who's selling the energy. They take Tri-State Energy, they move it around. They take Excel Energy, Black Hills, they take the solar arrays in the valley, they take the big wind farms up in Nebraska. And they move that around. So reliability comes through WAPA. The reliability of the sources in my mind, come through the diversification of those sources, not just coal, not just wind, not just solar. What can we do with storage? What can we do with hydrogen? What can we do? And those are all future things. And I know it's frustrating that it's in the future, but a lot of this stuff we need to deal with now, and diversification, that is very important. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kirsten. Mark?
Sorry.
Could I actually ask the same as Tim? Can you repeat the current question, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Reliability has been discussed at previous forums. We would like for you as a candidate to let us understand and know what role you believe LPEA plays in Tri-State and how that is different or relates to the balancing authorities like WAPA and the Western, what do I have it here? Hold on here a second. I gotta make sure I don't say it wrong. Western Area, Colorado, Missouri. And the reason we're asking this is because reliability has come up as one of the most important issues. We want to have a little bit of a discussion around that. So,
Monique, would you mind posting that in the chat so that
Great,
the
thanks.
candidates can see that?
yes.
Thank you. With respect to the two entities that you mentioned, I don't have a lot of information on either of those, so I would have to research that additionally if I were to speak intelligently upon it. But what I would say is that I agree that having diverse both sources and locations of energy production, as well as a certain amount of redundancy in terms of distribution of energy via transmission lines is probably going to be essential to, ensuring that we have reliable energy. I too would be interested to have additional conversations about things like microgrids and how local energy production can help with increased reliability. But I would say that, yeah, some redundancy and diversity of power sources and location of the power production would be essential to reliability of electrical production.
Thank you, Mark. Bill?
Yes, I agree with the diversity. The other thing that needs to be the reliability stuff we look at is the grid system. Tri-State has an obligation, as well as the Plata Electric, to continually replace and update the grid that we use. That's part of the reliability. The power sources is the other, and how it gets here. We have to keep with both Tri-State, because we are partners with them and own some of the same grid stuff. So we have to keep that going. And I do believe the reliability, like I have said, we can't just turn the switch off and go 100% renewable tomorrow. We have to wean ourselves off of the, I hate to say it, the fossil fuel stuff, but there is some clean fossil fuel with natural gas and stuff that we can do to assist us to have reliability till we can get to the diversified renewable energy sources that we need in our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Tim? Oh, you're muted, Tim.
That favorite thing everybody likes about me. So this is really a lot to cover in 60 seconds. I'm going to refer everyone to the Energy Strategies Wholesale Power Market Analysis, which is on the website under the Power Supply Committee. It has some great information in there. There are two aspects, there's many aspects to reliability. One of them, I think what you're talking about, is the power supply reliability. In that sense, there is the overall transmission grid and generation reliability, which is basically regulated by FERC, and upon which we depend, just like Tri-State does, on a balancing authority, and there what ensures our reliability. There is also our own distribution, which is what we as LPEA are responsible for. And that requires significant investment, ongoing investment into that distribution network in order to maintain that reliability. Thank you.
Ed Compton?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, most of it's been pointed out. Reliability comes from the source, and you know, diverse sources is good. One thing we can really look at here, and it's a highlight of what Tri-State has done for us, extremely reliable. And we can look at all the reasons why that has been a reliable source, you know, diversification, geologic diversification. But another thing that helps Tri-State with reliability is ownership. So when you own a production facility, an asset that creates electric power, you have more control over the reliability of that than when you're just purchasing power from somebody else. So this, to me, argues at least somewhat for local control and local ownership of energy supply. So I think there's a little bit here that says if we can develop more of our own local resources, it does enhance our reliability.
Thank you, Ted. Kohler?
Next time I want to go in front of Ted because he always takes my thunder. So I want to speak about reliability for a second. Excuse me. Because one of the biggest concerns I have, the biggest worries I have, is base load generation looking towards the end of the decade. Right now, I think our reliability is very solid. But looking towards then, and I don't care if you're talking about Tri-State or Excel or Guzman, whoever, we're closing down these base load generations, and we aren't replacing them with equal generation that can be base load. I'm learning more and more about how they're trying to make renewables more of a base load, but I'm not there yet. So my biggest concern is what are we going to do for reliability toward the end of the decade? And as far as reliability now with the balancing authority, that's taken care of, but you do have to be careful because they will guarantee you reliability, but they won't guarantee you price. And we're seeing that just like last year in California, some in Texas this last month, and even in Colorado. So reliability is key, and it is a worry for me in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kohler. Veronica?
take my mute off. All right. Reliability. I've said it more than once. It's about what the LPEA has control of, and that's it, to ensure the preventative maintenance process on what we have on our infrastructure, and then also doing the preventative maintenance when it's due. That's going to ensure part of that reliability, and then also to create or start looking at and planning for creating more infrastructure to go to that more reliable source, whether it's local or if it's elsewhere.
Thank you. And then John Purser.
I think one of the failures we saw in Texas was they were not part of a broader grid. Tri-State is part of WAPA, which we have to have for our reliability. I think Kohler made an excellent point about baseload. When we go more and more to renewables, I am greatly concerned about energy storage and the environmental impacts of energy storage. We look at one of the big renewables people are pushing is hydro. But we're also seeing the impacts of that on the environment and the ecosystems of rivers. We still haven't addressed the environmental impacts of battery storage, and they're huge. Creating a new technology that depends upon rare earth minerals strikes me as a bad idea. So we have to pay attention to base load. As Kirsten said, we have to be looking at the future. We can't be so tied to solar that we create a special interest that doesn't allow us to move beyond it. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. I was hoping to squeeze in a question about electric vehicles here in the last few minutes. There's a good discussion in the chat about transparency. I think that transparency, broadband, more on reliability would be issues we can discuss on the Be Local radio show, and definitely take a look at some of the resources that are being provided in the chat. As we wind down here, if you could quickly, 60 seconds or less, talk about what role, if any, you see electric vehicles playing in the grid, and what role LPEA would play with that. We would start with Mark.
Sure. I think in the long term, electric vehicles are quite likely to be the future, or at least a major part of the future. I caution rushing that direction too quickly in La Plata County, where a lot of our electricity currently does come from coal, still from Tri-State. However, as Kohler mentioned, with some of the new systems in place, we can be charging the batteries to EVs, during times when that energy is not necessarily as needed, and it's maybe available anyway. So I think that as long as we're thoughtful about EVs and the role they play, and make sure that the transition is gradual and well thought out, that there is a role for them in the present and a increasing role for them in the future.
Thank you, Mark. Bill Waters.
Yes, I do believe electric vehicles have a purpose here, and it's more of a short range distance. The question that I ask is, when you have a gasoline powered vehicle, you pay a gas tax that keeps the infrastructure of our roads and stuff you pay to drive on those. I don't know how you would charge the tax for electricity that's charging those cars, because those cars will wear and tear the road the same. Someone may answer that question. So I'm asking this because I don't know the answer, but I think we really need to understand, if it goes all electric and there's no taxes paid to repair our roads, how do we do that? But I do think for short hauls and a lot of the stuff, electric is great. It's clean, it's fast, and it's efficient for people. So I think it's a movement we can get to.
Thank you. Tim Wheeler. And you might be on mute, Tim.
All right. I know you all like that. So Bill, just real quick, there is a bill in the current legislature at Colorado to address that issue. And so you might want to look at that. I don't have the bill number on the top of my mind, but others have talked about raising revenues based on vehicle miles traveled as well, and a fee on that. So that's just an aside. In terms of electric vehicles, I mean, basically, in order to lower the carbon footprint and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we really need to think about electrifying everything. buildings, and vehicles. And that's why you see this large wholesale change in the motor vehicle industry to basically move to electric cars. That provides an opportunity for a utility like Plata Electric. And to the extent that more people, I answered part of his question. I'm going to take another few seconds. To the extent that we switch to electric vehicles, that will probably raise the usage of electricity within our co-op, which can also help lower rates. Greater load will offer an opportunity for lower rates. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Ted Compton.
Yeah, so I haven't driven an electric vehicle yet, 100% by choice, because everybody tells me once I drive one, I won't be able to go back to a gas-powered car. They're that fun. But I'd like to point out something. I had a nice conversation actually on a bike ride with Dan Harms, who works for LPEA, and he said, "Man, I wish we could get this power generation thing behind us, because there's some really fun things to work with on smart grid, and electric vehicles will have a huge impact in that. You know, everyone's got a huge battery sitting in their garage, and if LPEA has the ability to control when that's charging and discharging, it really does do a great service to our local electric grid in terms of when we have peak and when we don't have peak, and therefore how much we pay for power. So I think they're coming. I think we have to rush a little bit to get prepared to roll them out in Plata County."
Thank you so much, Ted Kohler.
EVs, I have had a chance to drive one, and that train is rolling down the tracks. They are a kick. They are a lot of fun. Now, that being said, and from a selfish point of view, as far as LPA goes, I think it's a real boost for LPA and other electric co-ops as well. Because one of the issues we have right now is that we're having growth in our community, but we aren't having growth in the electricity that they're using. So our infrastructure is costing us a lot more, and we're getting less for it. And one of the answers is electrifying things, and vehicles will be a big one to do that with. So I think there's quite a few advantages of it. I'm not quite there yet to buy one, but when I do, it's going to be fun. So I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kohler. Veronica?
Veronica just messaged me that she lost connection, so she's going to try to Zoom back in.
Okay, we're winding up here. So just two more. John Purser?
I'm not sure we're thinking it through thoroughly. People have mentioned that when they're parked in the garage, we can access the battery. Well, they're parked in the garage overnight when renewables are not available to charge them. I really worry that we're not thinking it through, and we're trading one environmental problem for another. Kirsten mentioned hydrogen, and it's down the way, but I don't want us to get so locked in on solar and electric cars that we build special interests that don't allow us to move beyond it. Every subsidy, every incentive creates a special interest that lives long beyond its purpose. That's why we still have fossil fuel subsidies and shouldn't. So I don't think we're thinking this through thoroughly, and it worries me. Being dependent on rare earth elements and not taking into account the recycling of batteries, I get concerned. I much prefer providing incentives for cleaner technologies down the line, the things we can't currently imagine.
Thank you, John. Kirsten?
Yes, thank you. So when we look at the energy consumption in the US, a third goes towards transportation, a third goes to electricity as we know it, what we turn our lights on with, and a third is industrial. We've been hitting the electricity pretty hard, and we need to continue to do that. Transportation is the next thing that needs to be hit in order to decrease our dependence on fossil fuels. In order to do that, electrifying them makes sense. For me, I just bought my first new vehicle since 1994, and it's partially electric. I can get 46 miles of electric, which is enough for me to get to the bakery and back every day. And I can still then, when I have to come up to Denver, I can hightail it up to Denver. So 90% of my trips are really short. I can do it electric. I've hooked it up to my LPEA charger. They can monitor it. They can use whatever they want. It's not as big a battery, but I'm really pleased that they're able to do that. And I took full advantage of that rebate, because not that rebate, that tool that they put out, because I really want them to use it too. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten. And did Veronica jump back on if she would like to answer that last question here? She's the last candidate to answer. Final question, if you'd like to, Veronica. I think I saw you there, but you're muted.
I don't know that her connection's back, but I can ask her to submit a written for this one, and we can include it in the follow-up if she's unable to join us.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We've gone a few minutes late. I really apologize for that. And I know that there were other issues we really wanted to get to. Transparency keeps coming up. I promise you, if you tune in to Be Local Radio on May 27th at 9 a.m., the candidates, some of them will be there. Also on June 3rd, we will be sure to talk about those topics. So thanks for your patience. We did what we could in 90 minutes. And again, just another shout out to Pine Needle Dry Goods, which was our headline sponsor. And a reminder on the timeline. Ballots are being mailed on May 17th. It's so important for us to vote in this election, to get as many people to vote. Often there's low turnout for this election. On June 16th at 4 p.m. those ballots are due. The annual meeting is on June 17th, and you have to pre-register for that. And I will put actually the link for registering for that meeting in the chat. And just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And have a great evening, and thanks for participating.
Thank you, Local First, and all the candidates.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the candidates. You guys are playing an important.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you. Great discussion, good forum. Thank you.
Thank you.